Chapter 14, The Escape. Miroe Pasap. I must escape the dungeons. There was no excuse for staying here this long. For someone like me, who had been roaming all his life, it was not right to be confined to one space. The problem was that there were soldiers that roamed the dungeon regularly. To top that, I had my regular dose of an herb, which prevented me from using my power. Whenever I try to touch someone's heart, it was as though I am grappling with something too slippery for me to grasp. I have always relied on my power. Whenever something went awry, I would seek vengeance and use my ability to get even. But here, nothing. I waited in silence as the sound of footsteps approaching got louder. I peered to see who it was when he finally passed by. They all looked the same to me. The same men garbed with soldier uniforms, similar haircuts, almost identical skin tone, and body type. If only I could get my hands on their hearts, one gentle squeeze ought to do it, and I would be free. There was movement inside the cell in front of me, and then I saw Mayo's face. His dark eyes were scrutinizing me. He used to have a plump face, and the first time I saw him here, he had gone thin. Now, it seemed like he had grown thinner still. He just stared at me, not saying a word. "If you expect me to talk to you, rest easy," I said. "I won't." He jerked as though he was still surprised to hear me speak. "What happened to you?" he asked. "Why did you end up here?" He paused before continuing, "Although I must admit I had wanted you to rot in here. But I don't want to rot here with you. That just isn't right." I moved back to my bunk and sat there, trying to ignore what he was saying. "If I escape this dungeon, I will leave him here." "Talk to me," he bellowed. "Do you know how difficult it is to stay sane here? It's been," he paused, "I think months already since I was detained. And at least now you're here. I must admit that you're not my favorite person, and if I could help it, I wouldn't talk to you. But the dungeon is lonely, and I don't know. Maybe we can escape together?" His voice went a little squeaky when he said together as though he was suggesting an alliance. "I know we didn't get along in the past," he continued, "but that's all water under the bridge. So, when you finally decide to escape, will you please take me? But after we escape, can you not kill me?" It was hilarious listening to him talk. For him to ask me to take him with him and soon to counter it by asking me not to kill him. Dire circumstances could really do so much to a person. "Are we friends now?" Mayo asked, probably upon hearing me chuckle to myself. "Of course not," I answered. "Oh. All right," he muttered in defeat. I could hear his footsteps retreating. It was followed by a soft thump, which I guessed was the sound he made when he sat on his bunk. Calo was the fat boy who irritated me each day we were together, back when we were still in Sinista. I would have frozen his heart if not for my twin Goemi, who was the epitome of kindness. She always wanted me to refrain from using my power and think hard before using it. I disagreed with her all the time, though. For me, my power was what would set me apart and would help me accomplish everything that I wanted to achieve. I tried to reach out to Mayo to touch his heart, but I could feel an invisible wall blocking my power from touching it. It was as though the extension of myself, my power, kept gliding smoothly away and missing what I was targeting. But maybe there was a way. There must be. I cannot let myself die here. I tried to touch Mayo with my power again and... "What are you doing?" Mayo yelled. He jumped from where he was and rushed to the steel bars, his face peering at me. "Did you just try to kill me, you criminal?" "Did you feel that?" I said in askance. "But how can you feel it when it just kept on gliding away?" "Help!" Mayo shouted. "Help! He's trying to kill me. His power is no longer blocked." "Shut your mouth," I said. "Don't call on them." But it was too late as the sound of rushing footsteps kept getting louder. "He tried to kill me," Mayo yelled. The soldier seemed confused. "That can't be." Eloy said I didn't need to make him drink another dose of an herb. At least not for another 5 hours. Whatever chance I had of escaping was now ruined thanks to Mayo. I seethed inside. The soldier put his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Over here. Bring the potion." He eyed me warily while waiting for the other soldier to reach him. My cell was opened, and the two soldiers entered. "No," I said as I pushed at them randomly. Laughter filled my ears as the new soldier clucked me on the head. "This is no easy task," he grumbled. "Tilt his head." The other soldier grabbed me by my hair and forcefully bent me backward while holding onto my hand. I squirmed to get out of their grasp, but it was impossible. A hard fist thumped me on the head. Groaning, I decided to stop flailing. The dark liquid filled my mouth, and I tried not to swallow it, but it was too much already as one soldier pinched my nose, forcing me to gulp hard. When there was nothing more left of the antidote they gave me, they pushed me back, and I fell to the ground. The sound of steel against steel was all I could hear as they locked my cell again. Their footsteps slowly faded. I stood up and doubled over, coughing, and trying desperately to spit the antidote out. Spittle desperately dripped from my mouth, but it was useless. I had swallowed every ounce of it. If I could just avoid that antidote, or if I could replace it with something else before they make me drink it. Or if someone would connive with me, one of the soldiers. If I only had some gold coins to offer, perhaps someone would release me, but I had nothing aside from my power. "I'm sorry," said Mayo, sounding apologetic. But he was crazier than I thought. A minute ago, he was yelling so that I could get the herb, and now, he says he is sorry. I ignored him and instead made my way to my bunk. I spat on the ground a few times. I wanted to forget what taste remained of the bitter antidote. I said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know the guards were going to do something like that to you," he said. "And besides, you did try to kill me." There was the lunatic in him that always contradicted himself. I shook my head, wishing I could get away from this dungeon and this unwanted company even more so. Mayo, Calo. I have been standing at the far end of my cell, watching Miroe for a while now. It probably had been hours already, although it was difficult to tell since it was always dark inside the dungeons. Occasionally, I would hear Miroe snoring, and I would wonder how in the world could anyone sleep so soundly in a place like this, let alone snore. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry," I chanted. Then I started again, a little louder this time, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "Aren't you going to stop taunting me?" Miroe shouted so suddenly that I jerked in surprise. "I need you to accept my apology," I yelled back. He bolted upright and rushed to the steel bars that separated us. "What need are you talking about? Are you so self-centered that you expect me to accept your apology just like that? And for the love of the gods, do you even mean it?" His hair was disheveled, but compared to how his hair had been before, it looked neater now. It was pulled back in a ponytail. Perhaps he did not get the chance to cut his hair. "I didn't mean for the soldiers to force you to drink that stuff," I said. "Would you stop touching my heart? Could you please promise that?" Miroe looked away. He returned to his bunk, probably not wanting to talk to me anymore. I knew he was irritable and taunting him was the only way I could get him to speak to me. "You know my grandma could be missing me right now. She's wondering where in Akea I had gone off to. She's old, and no one cares for her, and to make her worry, that's something I would like to spare her. But here, what can I do?" "Nothing," I said. I felt some of the weight on my shoulders had lifted as though saying my worries out loud was good enough to atone for my guilt. "Maybe, I know this sounds weird or unnatural to you, hearing it come from me, but I thought that maybe, there's a chance we could escape together?" My voice rose into a squeak, just like the first time I asked him. I have done nothing for Miroe to trust me, but our situations now were so tightly intertwined that I thought we could make some good out of it. "What do you think?" I asked. There was no response from Miroe, and I heard him snoring again after a while. I decided to go to my bunk and rest. The next time I woke, I wondered where I was. It was dark all around save for the flickering light at the end of somewhere I could not begin to fathom. I was about to panic when I remembered that I was inside my cell, in the Kanelan Palace dungeon. And then all my worries came back to haunt me. Where could Pyper be? Or Kino? What happened to my friends? Didn't they care that I was rotting here? There was nothing to eat, and to make things worse, I was stuck with Cratty Miroe. You should eat, Miroe said, breaking the silence, and I squealed. He laughed in that annoying manner. You are so squeamish. How in the world are we going to plan our escape if just by the sound of my voice you squeal already? I looked at him with googly eyes. Do you really mean that? I asked. There were many times that we didn't see each other eye to eye, and I don't doubt that there will be more. But what are we to do here if we're not going to help each other? Chances are, we'll both end up rotting, he said. You mean like a truce? I said. Exactly. But it doesn't mean that I would forget everything that you accused me of. I did no such thing. I yelled. Let me see, he said. You said I was a murderer, liar. What else? Miroe didn't understand that they weren't accusations at all if it were the truth. But I knew it was not the right time to argue. After all, the truce was more than I had hoped for. Fine, I said. Truce it is then. Miroe smirked, and now that there was no touch of crazy in his eyes, he did seem a little friendlier to me. So, what do we do now? I asked. Miroe's brows furrowed as he thought. There are some things we must think through. Like how can we ensure that my power does not get blocked? And then, even though it is unblocked, we're still stuck here if we don't have a key. We can only get to do this once. If we fail the first time, I doubt we ever will because I'm sure they would tighten security. Perhaps even make sure I'm drinking that horrid concoction every hour. A lot to process. Too many concerns. We must keep our voices down, I said in a bare whisper, hoping that he was the only one who could hear me. We're not the only ones here and... Escape, huh? Somebody said from maybe 2 cells away from us. It was followed by raucous laughter. Nobody escapes the Kanelan Dungeons alive. Miroe met my gaze, and we both went quiet afterward. My eyes flickered in fear, but Miroe held steady as though he was confident we were about to make history. Miroe Pasap. Every day, someone would come and make sure I drank the concoction to block my power off. It never failed. The bitter fluid completely stripped me of my power. I had to wash it out and wait for the concoction to lose its effect on me. After a few hours, I would be able to graze anyone's heart, but it was a dead end for me because I would be given another dose of an herb by then. I had to break the cycle. I was sure that someone from upstairs was monitoring my schedule and that there was probably no way anyone could tamper with it, which meant that only Mayo and I could act on our plans. I jolted up from my bunk as a thought occurred to me. Are you awake? I hissed at Mayo. There were faint movements in his cell before I saw his pudgy face. His round eyes were staring straight at me. Couldn't sleep, he murmured. I think the wails from the other end of this dungeon are getting to me. Soldiers were there some hours ago. I could swear I heard them saying something about hanging in the gallows. He was right. I heard those murmurs too, which prompted me to be more steadfast about our plans. We had to make our escape sooner. What's your power? I asked. Nothing that we could make use of here unless you want to remove all the bad ingredients from what you're eating, he grumbled. Crat. I said, wondering if there was a way we could escape. The soldiers come to me at specific periods to ensure that the antidote has not worn off yet. But after that, they just let me be. Lying here, no guards, nothing whatsoever to report what I was doing. And? He asked. That doesn't mean you can slip through the steel bars and run, right? He added sarcastically. I decided to ignore his tone. That gives us enough time to do something and escape, I said. He nodded slowly, but he seemed reluctant. I don't see how that could help us. What if we break the schedule? I said. How are we going to do that? He tried leaning closer to the bars. I'm not sure yet. Do you have any friends here? Acquaintances? He shook his head. He sighed loudly before saying, I think that as the days go by, it becomes clearer to me that there must be no way we could escape. That's not how you should be thinking. It's all in the frame of mind. If you believe that we can do it, then options would arise. I paused before continuing, come on. Think fast. What is it that drives your desire to escape? Mayo's shoulders slumped. I don't know. Think of something. My grandma, my dog, he paused. He hiccuped before saying, I used to help my friends, but now that I'm in danger, it seems like no one is going to come to save me. So, I won't make them my priority too. Revenge, then? I suggested. Let's say that once you get out of here, you can go after your friends and make them explain why they didn't rescue you. Would that be good enough? I don't know, he said silently. Maybe. He sank back further into his bunk now, pitying himself. Don't act like that. I said in a louder voice. If no one is going to come for you, you might as well be the one to pull yourself out of this situation. Think some more. What would you want to do as soon as you're out of here? Mayo remained motionless and looked down. There was a moment of silence before he glanced back up at me. I could feel his hope sliding away. The darkness in the dungeon does this to people, it drives away the very notion of hope. But we just couldn't let ourselves slide downhill this fast. The registry. He thundered as though some life had taken over him. The registry? What about it? I asked. That was what kept me hopeful all this time. When I get out, I want to steal the registry of citizens and find out who Kino's father was. And what Mistress Lamare Amark's power is. He said. Now his eyes shone brighter than the faint light of the dungeon's burning lamps. You know, this whole fiasco about the Emperor wanting Kino dead, this is probably how we're going to get to the bottom of it. If we could only trace Kino's heritage, then perhaps that would shed some light as to why the Emperor would want a nobody like Kino out of his way, he said. I was hanging on to his every word. It just occurred to me that I did not pay much attention to what had happened to us all this time. And why were soldiers everywhere in Sinista going after Nia, Lamare, if that was her real name, to bring her back to the Emperor? My goal then was simply to remove Arden from my twin's life. And now, Mayo was telling me all these. Hold on, I said. Are you saying that the Akene Wine Festival where the Emperor went crazy and killed 1,000 people, all of that was because of Kino? The boy who was with us? The one who had been claiming Nia was his mother? This time, I was the one who was more than surprised. Mayo nodded vigorously. Finally. You caught on. Mayo said in exasperation. Kino, Pyper, and I had been on the run ever since. We had nowhere to go after the festival, and that's when we ran into your group. The sad thing was that it didn't end well. And, he paused. His eyes had gone misty. Now, it seems like the Emperor's soldiers had won whatever battle their side had started against Kino and his mother. I don't know where Mistress Lamare was. I was able to warn them of the general's men, but that was before the general smacked me on the back of my head. The next thing I knew, I was here. As for the others, I have no idea what had happened to them. I still couldn't believe it. I was with Kino all this time, the boy that the Emperor was looking for. Had I known, perhaps, I could have handed him to the Emperor and gained a place in the Kanelan Palace. This made all this planning even better. All the more that I should be able to get out of here. And perhaps, extend the truce with Mayo until after we were reunited with his friends. I was so overwhelmed with this new information that I could hardly contain myself. All right, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. Let's plan this out. I'm sure we can figure out how to get out of here.